She traveled to marry a stranger, but found 7 orphans and a life she never expected. They said she was brave, but Anna wasn't brave. Not really. She was just tired of waiting, tired of working in silence, tired of being invisible in the world she came from. So when the letter arrived, handwritten and stamped from across the ocean, something inside her shifted. "Come start a life," it said. "There are children here who need a mother, and a man who's ready to be a husband." Anna didn't question it. She packed what little she had, kissed her sister goodbye, and boarded a boat that would take her far from everything she'd ever known, toward a future she had only dared to imagine. But when she stepped off that final wagon ride and stood in the dirt outside a collapsing farmhouse, there was no husband, no warm hand reaching out to greet her, just silence. And then, 7 pairs of eyes. Before we go on, this is Cracks of Light, where we tell real stories of quiet courage, second chances, and the strength that lives in ordinary people. If this kind of story moves you, subscribe to our channel and help us keep sharing moments like this. Now, back to Anna. She had imagined something different. Maybe not a palace, not comfort, but at least someone waiting. Instead, all she found were children, dirty, barefoot, and silent, watching her from the porch like ghosts who'd been left behind. A girl with tangled hair stepped forward first, no more than 10. "Are you Anna?" the girl asked. Anna nodded, still holding the letter tight against her chest. "He's dead," the girl said. "But Papa said you'd be our new mama." Anna blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" The girl didn't repeat herself. She just turned around and walked back into the house, leaving the door open behind her. The others followed one by one, their small bodies vanishing into the shadows of the creaking wooden frame. Anna didn't move. Her legs felt like stone. The wind pulled at her scarf, the silence pressing harder now. She looked down at the letter again. It was signed Noah Elias Carter. No mention of children. No mention of death. That night, she didn't sleep. The farmhouse was too cold, too quiet, and too full of questions. She sat at the edge of the tiny cot someone had prepared, her hands still trembling from the ride. She could hear them in the next room, murmuring, coughing, shifting under thin blankets. She hadn't eaten in over 12 hours, but her stomach was tied in knots. Was this a mistake? Was she a fool for coming? Or worse, was this some kind of trap? By morning, one thing was clear. There was no one else coming. No neighbors. No sheriff. No telegram. Just the children. 7 of them. All under 13. All hungry. All staring at her like she held the answers. And maybe she did. Anna woke up before the sun, but the house was already loud. 2 of the boys were chasing each other barefoot across the wooden floor, laughing like they'd never been told no in their lives. A girl was crying in the kitchen, something about missing her mother. Anna didn't know who to talk to first. She stood still for a moment, her eyes scanning the dusty room, her hands still sore from gripping the bed frame all night. Then she walked to the sink, if it could even be called that, and began searching for anything that resembled clean water. There was none. By the end of the first morning, Anna had found 1 broken basin, half a bag of flour, and 7 children who seemed to believe she was already their mother. She wasn't. Not yet. But they called her Mama Anna anyway. The stove didn't work. So she built a fire in the yard, just like her grandmother had taught her long ago. The children stared at her while she kneaded dough with shaking fingers, her sleeves rolled up to her elbows, her back aching from the cold ground. The oldest girl, Lena, hovered nearby but didn't help. She just watched. The others whispered about her when they thought she couldn't hear. "She's not staying," one of the boys muttered. "She'll leave like the last one." Anna didn't ask what that meant. She didn't want to know. All she focused on was making something, anything, that smelled like food. That night, they ate flatbread and boiled potatoes in silence. No one said thank you. No one complained. But when Anna stood to wash the dishes, 3 of the children quietly got up and helped her. That was the first sign. The next morning, Anna found the baby, barely 2 years old, chewing on a piece of raw onion. There was no soap, no diapers, and no schedule. Everything was chaos. She bathed the children one by one in a chipped metal basin behind the house, scrubbing the dirt from their necks and behind their ears. Most of them squirmed, one of them screamed, and one tried to run. But by the end of the day, they were all clean, bundled in hand-me-downs that barely fit, their hair combed and skin soft from warm water. Anna collapsed on the floor that night, too tired to cry. But when she opened her eyes the next morning, someone had tucked a small drawing under her pillow. It was a picture of her holding hands with all 7 kids. None of the children admitted to making it. But she didn't ask. She just folded it gently and put it in her coat pocket. Days blurred. Anna cooked, scrubbed floors, pulled weeds from a neglected garden, and hung wet clothes across a line that barely held. She stitched torn sleeves with borrowed thread and swept out corners that hadn't seen a broom in years. And still, the house felt like it belonged to someone else, like she was borrowing a life that didn't quite fit. The children weren't cruel. They were just wild. They yelled. They fought. They hid behind doors and snuck candy from places Anna couldn't even reach. But they never left her alone. Not once. Wherever she went, one of them was close behind. Whether it was the oldest boy watching her dig for carrots, or the youngest clinging to her skirt while she stirred soup, Anna felt their quiet, stubborn presence like a shadow she couldn't shake. She thought about leaving. Every night, she'd sit on the porch and hold that same letter in her hand, reading the last line over and over again. Please help them, if you can. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a promise. It was a plea. She wasn't sure if it came from Noah or from the children, or maybe from someone long gone who had simply wanted them to be okay. Either way, it pulled at her. Still, doubt lingered. This wasn't her plan. She was supposed to be a wife. She was supposed to be loved, welcomed, wanted. Instead, she was washing clothes for strangers and eating boiled cabbage in a house that smelled like rain and mildew. She didn't speak the language of children. She didn't know how to be a mother. She only knew how to survive. One evening, the middle boy, Toby, got a deep cut on his leg after climbing a rusted fence. He didn't cry. He limped back to the house, blood dripping down his shin, and sat in the dirt, waiting for her. Anna didn't panic. She washed his leg, picked the thorns out with tweezers, and wrapped it in a cloth torn from her own underskirt. When she was done, he looked at her and said, "Mama used to do that." Then he stood up and walked away like nothing happened. That night, when Anna came in from folding laundry, the children were all sitting quietly around the fire. No one fought. No one moved. They just waited until she sat down, and then they leaned into her. Anna didn't say a word, but inside, something cracked open. She didn't know if she could stay. She didn't know if they would ever really be hers. But for the first time since arriving, she stopped thinking about leaving. Anna knew something was wrong before anyone said a word. The baby, Milo, hadn't moved much since morning. He hadn't cried. He hadn't smiled. He hadn't even reached for her when she handed him a warm spoonful of broth. By early afternoon, his skin felt hot and his breath came shallow. Anna touched his forehead and knew fever. Real fever. She asked Lena if there was medicine in the house. The girl only shrugged and said, "Papa used to ride into town when one of us got sick. But town's too far now." That was it. No panic. No urgency. Just the kind of numb acceptance that comes from living too long without help. Anna didn't hesitate. She soaked cloths in cool water and pressed them to the baby's skin. She held him close and tried to rock the heat out of him. She sang softly old lullabies from her own childhood, hoping he'd hear something familiar in her voice. Night fell hard. The other children watched from the doorway, quiet and wide-eyed. No one joked. No one ran. They just sat on the floor, waiting. Anna didn't sleep. Every hour, she checked his temperature. She counted his breaths. She whispered promises. At one point, she thought he stopped breathing altogether. Her heart stopped too. But then he stirred, just a little, and she cried for the first time since arriving. By morning, the fever broke. Milo's skin turned cool and his chest rose steady. He opened his eyes slowly, blinked twice, and then reached out one tiny hand for her face. Anna held him so tight she could barely breathe. Behind her, someone sniffled. It was Toby, the middle child, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. "You stayed," he mumbled. Anna nodded but said nothing. There was nothing to say. They all saw it. She had stayed when it counted. That was the shift. The air changed. The children began moving toward her like magnets she hadn't realized were already in place. Lena started bringing her water without being asked. The boys helped dig potatoes. Even the youngest began calling her Mama, without a second thought. But it wasn't just what they did, it was how they looked at her. Like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't temporary anymore. A few days later, while cleaning out an old drawer in the back room, Anna found the envelope. It was the same one she had carried all the way from her village. Same handwriting. Same seal. But this one had no stamp. No postmark. No sign it had ever passed through any official hand. Inside was a second letter shorter, messier, barely legible. It read, "Dear Miss Anna, Papa says he wants to write you, but he can't anymore. So I'm writing for him. We need help. There are 7 of us, and we don't got a mama. If you come, we'll be good. I promise. Sincerely, Lena. Anna sat down. The paper trembled in her hands. She read it again, slower this time. The words weren't poetic. They weren't polished. But they were real. Raw. The kind of desperate that comes from a child trying to hold a broken world together. Lena hadn't forged the letter to trick Anna. She had written it because she had no other choice. That evening, Anna waited until the children were settled before pulling Lena aside. "I found your letter," she said. Lena stiffened, shoulders drawn up like she was ready to be punished. But Anna didn't raise her voice. She didn't even frown. She just held out the page. Lena stared at it without speaking. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean to lie. I just thought if I sent it myself, maybe someone would come this time." Anna didn't answer right away. She looked at the girl, really looked at her for the first time. Not as the bossy one or the oldest, but as a child who had been pretending to be strong for too long. "You did the right thing," Anna said. "You saved your family." Lena's eyes welled up, but she nodded once and turned away, wiping her face on her sleeve. From that moment on, Anna stopped seeing them as strangers. They were her kids now. Not by blood, not by law, but by choice. And somehow, that meant more. Because it had been earned. Not promised. Not expected. Earned through fire, sweat, tears, and one silent night beside a fevered child. She didn't think about leaving after that. Not even once. The storm didn't announce itself with thunder. It started with silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin feel tight and your breath feel shallow. Anna noticed it in the middle of washing clothes. Birds gone quiet, the wind holding its breath. Then the sky turned the color of wet stone, and the trees began to lean like something was pushing them from above. Within 20 minutes, the rain hit so hard it was like standing inside a waterfall. The roof started leaking in 3 places. The floor flooded in 5. The back window cracked. The children panicked. Anna didn't scream. She told them to grab blankets and move fast. She pulled the youngest into her arms, then tied the second youngest to her back with a bedsheet. Her feet sloshed through rising water as she shoved open the front door. "We're going now," she said, loud enough for the older ones to hear. No one argued. The wind was too loud. Branches snapped. Mud sucked at their heels. Anna held tight to each child as they crossed the yard, shielding their heads with her arms, calling out names to keep track of them. She didn't stop until they reached the first house at the edge of the village. She banged on the door. No one came. She banged again. Finally, it cracked open. A man stared out, eyes wide, mouth frozen. "Please," Anna shouted. "The children, please." He moved. The door swung open, and they all poured inside, wet and coughing and shaking. The man's wife ran to the fireplace and lit something. A girl brought towels. Someone handed Anna a dry shirt. No one asked questions. Not then. They spent that night on the floor of that stranger's house, wrapped in borrowed quilts, surrounded by the sound of water pounding against windows. The children huddled close to her. Not one of them cried. They just held on. When morning came, the storm had left the village shredded. Trees were down. Fences gone. Chickens scattered. The farmhouse where Anna had lived was half flooded. The back wall collapsed. Her garden, her pots, the little shelf where Milo kept his carved bird, they were all gone. But the children were alive. That's what mattered. And for the first time, people noticed. Neighbors started dropping by. One brought bread. Another offered spare shoes. The same man who had opened the door during the storm walked up to Anna and said, "Didn't think you'd last a week." "I was wrong." She didn't reply. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to being seen. Word spread. People began referring to her differently. Not the foreign girl. Not the bride who showed up to no groom. They started calling her the mother of the 7. The one who ran through the storm. The one who didn't leave. Anna didn't change overnight. She still cleaned until her hands cracked. She still woke before dawn and fell asleep after midnight. But something was different. People greeted her now. The children walked taller. Lena even smiled in public. It felt like, for the first time, they all belonged somewhere. Maybe not officially. Maybe not on paper. But in the eyes of the town, they were a family now. It was 2 weeks after the storm when he showed up. Anna was hauling wood behind the house when she saw the shadow. A tall man, shoulders broad, jacket soaked from travel, stood at the edge of the path. His eyes were searching, his hands empty. She stepped forward cautiously. He didn't move. He just looked at her, and then he asked, "Are you Noah Carter's wife?" Anna froze. The words dropped between them like a stone in a still pond. The children were still inside. The roof was still broken. Her heart had finally stopped running. And now this. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. because in that moment, she wasn't sure how to answer. The man's name was Eli. He didn't speak much at first, just stood on the porch, hat in hand, eyes fixed on the children behind Anna like they were something out of a dream he'd forgotten. He looked younger than Noah might have been, but there was a tiredness in his face that said he'd aged too fast. When Anna finally invited him in, the kids went silent. Lena narrowed her eyes. Toby wouldn't sit down. Only Milo, too young to understand what was happening, reached up for Anna's hand like nothing had changed. Eli watched it all. Then he cleared his throat and said, "I guess I owe you a long explanation." They sat at the old table, the one Anna had scrubbed clean the first week she arrived. Eli spoke quietly. Noah had been his older brother. After their parents died, Noah took over raising the kids, some his, some adopted, some left on the porch one rainy night. Noah wasn't perfect, but he had heart. He'd written the first few letters looking for a wife, hoping someone would come, but he never sent them. He was too proud, too unsure. The last letter, the one Anna received, wasn't written by Noah at all. It was Eli's. He found the old drafts, saw the situation getting worse, and mailed one without Noah knowing. By the time he came back to check in, Noah had died. A fever. No one in the village even got to him in time. The kids were alone. The letter was already on its way. Eli had come to apologize. He hadn't expected anyone to show up, let alone stay. But when he saw Anna with the children, cooking, teaching, holding their hands like she'd always been there, he couldn't bring himself to interrupt it. "You could have left," he said. "I wouldn't have blamed you." Anna didn't answer right away. She stared at the letter on the table, the one that brought her here. It looked different now. Smaller. Like it had stopped meaning something the moment she stopped needing a reason to stay. Later that night, Anna sat alone in the dark kitchen, the children asleep, the house unusually quiet. She thought about the place she left behind. Her small bed, her sister's gentle scolding, the faded plans she once had for her life. She thought about how different things were now. She hadn't chosen this. Not really. She hadn't signed anything. She hadn't promised them forever. And yet, it was the only place that had ever felt like hers. The faces of the children flashed through her mind. Toby's scraped knees, Lena's stubborn silence, the way Milo curled into her chest like he knew she was home. They weren't waiting to be adopted. They weren't begging her to stay. They were just there, looking at her like she already belonged. The next morning, Eli offered to take her back to the city. He had connections. A friend with a boarding house. A way out, if she wanted it. He said it without pressure, just a quiet offer, like someone laying a coat over a puddle. Anna listened. She nodded. Then she walked out to the garden. The soil was still wet from the storm. Weeds had already begun to grow back. She pulled on her gloves and knelt down. When Lena came out an hour later, Anna didn't say anything. She just handed her a small spade. The girl didn't speak either. She just started digging beside her. That afternoon, Anna found a stack of blank papers and wrote her own letter. Not to family. Not to any man. To the town clerk. It was a formal request to be considered legal guardian of the 7 children in her care. She signed it Anna Carter because deep down she'd already taken the name. Not for Noah. Not for Eli. For them. The ones who hadn't asked her to stay, but silently prayed she would. She handed the letter to Eli without a word. He read it, folded it, and said, "I'll make sure it gets there." And just like that, the question was no longer if she belonged here. It was how they had ever managed without her. The paperwork didn't take long. Eli helped with the signatures. The town clerk, who had once looked right through her, shook her hand firmly and said, "It's official now." Just like that, Anna became the legal guardian of 7 children who once had no one. There was no parade, no fanfare, just a quiet nod from the village and a string of warm congratulations from neighbors who finally saw her as more than a stranger. She didn't need applause. She just needed time. And every day after that, she gave it fully, fiercely, without asking for anything back. Mornings started earlier now. She organized lessons at the long dining table, turning the same space where they once argued over bread into a classroom. Lena helped with reading. Toby helped teach the little ones to count. Milo learned his letters by tracing them on Anna's back with a stick while she hung clothes. The others picked up fast. She wasn't a trained teacher, but she knew how to make things stick. Patience, repetition, small victories. By spring, the garden was alive again. They planted rows of carrots and tomatoes, strung string beans across stakes, lined the edges with mint to keep the bugs away. The village kids started stopping by, first out of curiosity, then out of habit. By summer, Anna had more than 7 in her care. Some came to read, some came to eat, Some came just to sit quietly in the presence of someone who listened. She opened a small shed and turned it into a makeshift classroom. No chalkboard, just chalk. No desks, just benches. But it worked. The children changed, slowly but clearly. They stood straighter, spoke kinder, fought less, smiled more. People in town started saying it out loud, that Anna, she did something none of us could. When a reporter from a nearby town came to do a piece on rural education efforts, someone nominated Anna for a community award. She didn't expect it to go anywhere. She didn't even attend the meeting where they decided. But a month later, the mayor showed up at her door with a small plaque in his hands and a photographer at his side. Mama Anna, the plaque read, Mother of the Year. She didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of the cameras. But that night, after the kids were in bed and the light was off, she sat alone at the table, holding the plaque, her fingers tracing the name over and over again. It wasn't the recognition that moved her. It was the fact that someone, somewhere, had seen it too, that what she had become wasn't an accident. It was earned. Outside her door, she heard footsteps. Small ones. Then giggles. Then a voice Lena's soft but clear. Night, Mama Anna. The others echoed it. Not one missed. And Anna, who had once arrived on a broken wagon carrying nothing but a letter, whispered back, Good night, babies. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of quiet love, of choosing family, of rising when the world gives you nothing, then help us keep stories like this alive. Click subscribe, leave a comment, and share your favorite moment. This is Cracks of Light, where even the smallest flicker can change everything.